Resident Evil's Tyrants are awesome. They're imposing, monstrous figures that constantly evolve the more you encounter them. But video games rarely let you play as the big boss monster. After all, they're built to be a challenge while still communicating clear vulnerabilities to players. But I figured out how you can play as one in D&D, and all you need is a single Barbarian subclass. One that lets you mutate into various forms, similar to the iconic boss fights from Resident Evil. Welcome to My Life is VMC, where we take pop culture to pen and paper. I'm V, and I've been running and designing D&D Homebrew for 10 years. Today's subclass is the Path of the Bio-Advent, and it leans hard into the bioweapon fantasy. And I chose Resident Evil's Tyrant as inspiration because it's one of the best examples of an ever-evolving boss monster. And being able to play as one is a character fantasy that seems underrepresented. Unfortunately, translating that fantasy to D&D came with two big hurdles: roleplay and the Path of the Beast subclass from Tasha's Cauldron of Everything. Let me explain. Tyrants aren't exactly known to have a comforting presence, which means roleplay will likely be a pain point for a lot of players. But this hurdle had a surprisingly easy fix. The Barbarian's Rage already has built-in modes of play, letting me tie in mutations to that feature. This lets you stay relevant during RP by reserving your big bright smile for your enemies. The second hurdle, however, isn't so easy to fix, because it risks overlapping with this entire subclass. Because Path of the Beast from TCE has similar transformation mechanics, and it's easy to flavor them as bioweapon mutations. And while that might work for a lot of tables, that just isn't enough for me. I needed something that captures the Tyrant's constant mutations, like oversized claws or whip-like tendrils. And ultimately, that's what led me to design this subclass. So let's take a look at the Bio-Advent's core feature, Biometamorph. This feature centers on transforming into different forms called metamorph forms. Each one has a mutate effect and a surge effect, which I'll explain in a bit. When you enter Rage, choose a metamorph form that you know and gain its effect. One of the simpler forms is Bursting Musculature, which grants Forceful Blow. This changes your unarmed strike damage to 1d8 and can knock a target prone. It's reminiscent of a bruiser-type tyrant like the one from RE2 or Nemesis, at least before they start evolving. A more unusual form is Bioelectric Bones. This causes your bones to burst through your skin and charge it with electricity. Its mutate effect gives you Conductive Strike, which makes your unarmed strike deal 1d4 piercing damage and 1d4 lightning damage. In addition, you can force a target to make a Constitution saving throw. On a failed save, its speed is halved and its next attack has disadvantage. I'll showcase this later in the action cam, so do stick around. There are a total of 5 metamorph forms, and each one is inspired by a tyrant or bioweapon from the Resident Evil series. I've already explained the first two, so let's quickly go through the other ones. Enlarged Claws changes your unarmed strikes to a d10 slashing damage that cuts enemies even on a miss. Firewalker gives you a fiery aura that deals fire damage equal to 1d8 plus your rage damage bonus. And finally, Rising Tendrils gives you a defensive aura that's difficult terrain for your enemies and half cover for your allies. You gain 2 metamorph forms at 3rd level, and you gain a new form at higher Barbarian levels. These forms already set the Bio-Advent apart from the Path of the Beast, but they don't fully express the volatile nature of a bioweapon's mutations. So this feature goes deeper. As part of activating Rage, you gain 5 metamorph points. By expending 1 point, you can use the Surge feature of your current metamorph form until the start of your next turn. So if your current form is Bioelectric Bones, you can use Mutation Discharge for 1 point, which lets you fire a bolt of lightning. But if you expend 3 points, you can use the Surge feature from any metamorph form that you know. This lets you do cool combos, like using Tendril Whip from Rising Tendrils and pull them into your Firewalker's aura. The Surge effects can really synergize with the mutate effects, but I made sure to keep the complexity relatively simple. But as you gain more metamorph forms at higher levels, you'll want more metamorph points to play with your new surge effects. By expending additional uses of your rage, you can gain 5 more points for each expended use. Metamorph points also enable Metamorphosis Shift. This lets you change your current metamorph form into a different one as a bonus action. So, we now have a way to mutate without impeding RP and express body horror mutations with Mutate and Surge. But the Resident Evil games are a bit infamous for their big red glowing weak spots, and I really wanted to represent them. So I designed Metamorph Imperfections. When you enter your Rage and take on your Metamorph form, you roll on the Imperfections table and receive its effects. I really needed to be careful with this one, because I didn't want it to take away too much from a Barbarian. So I designed these effects to be more flavorful and emphasize the Bio-Advent's experimental nature. Over half of these imperfections add vulnerabilities to relatively uncommon damage types. In most encounters, they likely won't even come up. Rolling a 5, for example, partially exposes your nerves, leaving you vulnerable to lightning damage. It doesn't seem like much, but the visual aspects of these imperfections let smarter enemies capitalize on your weaknesses. It's a mechanical feature that offers a narrative tool, and represents the BioAdvent's inspiration without being too punishing. It also gives a tactical use for Metamorphosis Shift, since it replaces your imperfections with a new one. And there we have it, our core feature. And this pretty much defines the BioAdvent's gameplay loop. But let's check out how the BioAdvent grows at higher levels. Level 6's Alchemical Stability slows the pace a bit, but offers relevant abilities. Infused Veins keeps your Metamorph forms relevant against physically resistant enemies. Meanwhile, Toxic Blood grants resistance against poison, and it makes you immune to the damage type and the condition while raging. At level 10, you gain Volatile Evolution, and it lets you roll on a table and gain its effects. Unlike the Imperfections table, these are all beneficial effects. Some effects grant an extra arm, while others grant immunity to the blinded condition by giving you extra eyes. This also keeps your Metamorph points relevant by letting you expend options to choose your buffs. Finally, the level 14 capstone feature is Advent of Perfection. This is when you become a Resident Evil-style final boss. By expending 5 Metamorph points, you can choose special beneficial mutations. Gigantism, for example, increases your size and grants additional buffs. Oozification, on the other hand, lets you become the blob that can consume everything. But at this level, your Metamorph points are probably a precious resource, so I added an alternative. You can gain your capstone benefits without spending points by rolling twice on the Imperfections table. This adds a layer of tactical decision making, and lets players stay on their toes. Now that we have all the features, I'll show you how the subclass plays in combat using my signature action cam. But first, give me about a minute to talk about our memberships. The BioAdvent is free up to level 6, and you can purchase the full version on Ko-Fi or Patreon linked in the description. But by joining the $5 tier, you unlock the BioAdvent plus all my other homebrew for free. You also get members-only homebrew, access to our Discord, and your name in our videos. Memberships and purchases are the best ways to support the channel, and it funds my wife's risotto addiction. You can also help us by liking the video and commenting on your favorite Jill Valentine outfit. There is only one correct answer. Anyway, a huge thank you for supporting the channel. And now, back to the video. Welcome to the Action Cam! Our BioAdvent today is Pierce Nivens. He's a former counter-terrorist soldier who, in a desperate moment, used a mutagen that turned him into a bioweapon. Pierce has since been on the run from the same faction that created this mutagen, and now they see him as a loose asset. Unfortunately, the faction's mercenaries have caught up to him. For this combat encounter, Pierce will be a level 9 BioAdvent Barbarian, with a human species and soldier background. With a tough feat from human and accounting for 2 ASIs, his stats using point buy look like this. For his opposition, Pierce will be facing a trio of mercenaries using the Berserker, Bandit Captain, and Priest Acolyte stat blocks. Now, let's get comfy at the table and begin. Pierce takes initiative and gets a drop on the trio. He takes a bonus action to enter range. His arm splits into fleshy prongs and bony spikes burst from him as he takes on the Bioelectric Bone's Metamorph form. Unfortunately, his Metamorph imperfection reduces his speed by 15 feet whenever he takes the dash action. As part of entering rage, he'll expend 2 more uses of it to gain 15 Metamorph points. He quickly assesses the squad's formation and moves to a more advantageous position. Seeing the backline to be the weakest, he'll expend 3 Metamorph points and attempt to reel her in using Tendril Whip. Pierce rolls a 22, hitting her with 10 piercing and lightning damage from Conductive Strike, then reels her in with Tendril Whip. The attack shocks her, but the Acolyte manages to make her con save against his secondary effect with a 17. And with all 3 mercenaries lined up, Pierce rolls to the side and forgoes his second attack to use Mutation Discharge. The Acolyte is burnt to a crisp as the bolt of electricity rips across all 3 mercenaries. The captain is slightly grazed as he rolled away, but the Berserker behind him takes the full brunt of it. What they both hadn't realized was that Pierce bolt carried Conductive Strike's secondary effect. As the bolt shocked through their nerves, both the captain and the Berserker fail their con saves. Their speed is halved and their next attacks have disadvantage. Pierce then uses the rest of his speed to gain more distance. The captain immediately opens fire on Pierce, missing with a 10 from disadvantage, then hitting with an 18 on the second attack. Luckily, Pierce's mutation makes him resistant to physical damage, only taking 6 piercing damage. Meanwhile, the Berserker had to dash to close the distance, as Pierce's lightning halved his speed. It's Pierce's turn once more, and he'll use Metamorphosis Shift to mutate into his Firewalker form. As his blood heats to a boiling point, his Metamorph imperfection unfortunately leaves him vulnerable to acid damage. The Berserker in front of him immediately burns from Pierce's Intensity, taking 9 fire damage. Pierce then rips a street sign along with its concrete base and recklessly swings it like a maul against the Berserker. With a roll of 18, Pierce slams the Berserker for 24 bludgeoning damage and pushes him 15 feet away thanks to Brutal Strike's forceful blow effect. The Berserker rolls and tumbles, falling prone against Pierce's Topple Mastery with a 12 on the strength save. Pierce moves up towards the Berserker, but this also burns the Captain for 10 fire damage thanks to his boiling blood aura. As the Berserker lies at Pierce's feet, the Bioadvent lifts his maul and makes one overhead strike. Pierce lands a critical hit, popping the Berserker's head like a watermelon with 25 bludgeoning damage. The Captain fears for his life and throws a vial of acid at Pierce as he moves out of Pierce's reach. Even with Pierce's danger sense, he fails to dodge the acid vial. The 11 acid damage he takes sears into him for 22 instead due to his Metamorph imperfection. As the Captain runs, Pierce snags him with his maul with a 26 to hit, toppling the mercenary with 14 bludgeoning damage. The Captain continues to open fire upon Pierce as he makes his retreat, hitting him with a 21 to hit, but only for 2 piercing damage. Pierce drags his concrete maul along the ground as the hobbling mercenary stumbles in a panic. The Bioadvent knows this won't be the last of his pursuers, but at least it'll give him a moment of peace. Remember to get the path of the Bioadvent linked in the description. Now, playing as a Resident Evil Tyrant is one thing, but what if you flipped the script and ran it against your players instead? This video right here gives you exactly that. But before you go, let's take a moment to thank these magnificent mallards who keep this channel afloat. MC, please do the honors.
Hello, it's me, the Mallard Queen, again! We'd love to give a special shout out to these magnificent mallards. Mr. Phantom, Game Gamer Gamer Gaming, Storm Starshine, Yggdrasil 88, Bryant LW, Coinop 1989, KV, Piku, and Cosplay Battle. Once again guys, thank you so much for your support, especially if you've made it all the way till the end of the video. We love you guys.